Imagine waking up to a world where every border is open, every port is crowded, every palace knows the names of foreign kings, and within a single human lifetime, it all burns. Ships vanish, scribes flee, and the proudest cities on earth turn to ash. Farmers bury bronze swords in panic and run for the hills. Priests stare at empty granaries and whisper that the gods have left. It's not a war, it's not a plague, it's everything, all at once. This is the story of 1177 BCE, the year we give a name to a collapse that took decades to arrive and centuries to recover from. The Late Bronze Age world, Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenaean Greece, Canaan, Cyprus, Kassite Babylonia, Assyria, was global, literate, luxurious, and fragile. And then, in a rush of fire and dust and letters written too late, it wasn't. Picture the map. To the west, Mycenaean palaces glitter above harbors, Mycenae, Tyrans, Pylos, with storerooms stacked in measured order, oil, wine, perfume, bronzes recorded in linear B. To the north, the Hittite Empire sits over Anatolia, strong as a clenched fist, its roads patrolled, its granaries deep, its capital Hattusa baked into the hills with gates of lions and gods. East of the sea, bright cities string the coast like beads, Ugarit, Byblos, Tyre, merchant kingdoms whose scribes write in multiple alphabets because trade speaks many tongues. South, Egypt rules the Nile like a god's signature, pyramids behind it, Ramesses on the throne, chariot cores oiled and glittering. In the middle runs the sea, a road paved in water, crowded with ships stacked with copper and tin, purple dye, ivory, gold, timber, grain. Couriers carry wax tablets and diplomatic gifts, kings call each other brother, and silver goblets travel farther than most people ever will. A world like ours, only hung from oars, wind, and promises. Listen to one of those promises on a clay tablet from Ugarit. The king writes quietly urgent words to a neighbor. The enemy ships are here. Our cities have been set on fire. Where are your archers? Where are your troops? We know how the letter ends. In ash, buried under the palace floor when the city burns. We find it 3,000 years later and call it a clue. It was a symptom. The disease had many names: drought, famine, earthquakes, rebellions, refugees, pirates, new weapons, old debts, systems failure. Pick one, and you will be partly right. Pick them all, and you will be closer. Start on land under a sky that stops raining. Tree rings and lake mud whisper the same thing: years on years of less water. Less water means lower rivers, fewer crops, angry farmers, ambitious men with better answers. Granaries shrink. Armies fed by those granaries shrink too. Trade does not stop, but it coughs. The tin that makes bronze comes from far away. Your sword depends on someone else's mountain. A merchant is delayed. A ship is late. The king waits for oxhide copper ingots that never arrive. And the scribe records shortages in a neat hand while the guards watch the horizon. You can feel a rope pulling tight across the map. Now add the sea. The Egyptian records call them peoples of the sea. Coalitions with cartloads and children, not just raiders but movers. Families on the move because somewhere behind them, the ground failed. They land like storms and look for food, land, survival. Sometimes they fight, sometimes they settle. If you are king and you see them coming, you call them invaders. If you are a fisherman whose village is on fire, you call them something worse. The truth is simpler. They are part of the same system, breaking in another place. And there are earthquakes. The Aegean shakes, walls split, rooms collapse into their own shadows. Tyrans repairs its fortifications and then rebuilds again. Mycenae sags, recovers, and sags once more. Whole coastlines roll under the weight of tremors. The sea does not care. It keeps time to a deeper clock. Inside palaces, the accounting never stops, until it does. At Pylos, in the final days, scribes still press reeds into wet clay. Watchers of the coast, men posted at such and such places. The entries are short and urgent, and then they end mid-breath as if someone ran. In Hattusa, a bureaucracy that has counted everything for centuries, horses, soldiers, loaves of bread, goes silent. We find burnt archives and broken gates and wonder how a capital so sure of itself could just stop. In Ugarit, the harbor fills with ships that do not unload fast enough. In one half-excavated house, bronze statues lie abandoned under a layer of ash so clean you can run your finger through it and smell yesterday. On the Nile, Egypt meets the storm with the calm of someone who has a river for a spine. Merneptah and Ramesses III fight the newcomers in set-piece battles carved on temple walls. Chariots racing, archers in ranks, enemy ships snared in nets of war. The reliefs boast of victory. None who came were spared. And perhaps on those days the river did win. But victory costs. Grain runs thin. Pay is late. Tomb workers strike, the first strike in history we can read in their own words, and complain that their children are hungry. Priests barter for oil. Egypt survives 11th Senasa D7, but it limps. If this no-filter deep-time story has you hooked, tap like and drop a comment with the thread that felt tightest. The rain that didn't fall, the ships that didn't come, or the letters that arrived too late. Your nudge helps the algorithm carry this to more curious minds. Thanks. And then there is the technology. The old elite ride chariots, 2 men and a horse, speed and shock, thunder on light wheels. But the new fighters carry iron-tipped spears, big round shields, sometimes long swords meant for close work. Iron is harder to make than bronze, but once you learn, the ore is everywhere. The supply chain is shorter. The power moves from chariot-owning aristocrats to men who can stand shoulder to shoulder and push. Tactics change. So does politics. So does who matters. If you want a smoking gun, you will not find one. You will find smoldering cities, Mycenae and Pylos in Greece, Ugarit on the Syrian coast, and Komi and Kition on Cyprus, Hattusa and its outposts in Anatolia. You will find letters begging for grain because famine loves a drought and a closed road. You will find refugee layers, new pottery styles, Philistine ceramics in the southern Levant that look Aegean and local at once, people picked up and set down with their habits and their hands. You will find shipwrecks like Ulu Burun, a century earlier, that show you what a global cargo looked like. Copper and tin, ebony, glass, resins, luxury, all bought on credit from strangers with names you could write to and titles you had to respect. You will find those same names scratched out or never written again. So what happened? Everything at once. Climate-stressed crops, stress pulled on taxes. Taxes paid armies that defended trade that brought tin that made swords that kept taxes coming. Break one link hard enough, and if the others are already creaking, the chain drops. The collapse is not one empire dying heroically. It is 5 or 6 falling sideways into each other until the hull is wreckage and no one remembers which beam failed first. The Hittite Empire disappears so thoroughly that for 2,000 years we forget it existed. The Mycenaean palaces burn, and the Greek world forgets how to write for centuries. When it returns to literacy, it uses a different script and tells a different kind of story. The Canaanite cities shrink and then change their names. Assyria draws its cloak around itself and waits, sharpening knives. It will come back later with iron in its hand and terror in its laws. Egypt survives this storm, but it will not be the same. Its new kingdoms are shorter, its memory heavier. Out of the collapse grow new peoples with compact cultures: Aramaeans, Israelites, Phoenicians, Philistines, and later, from across the water, a Greek world of police that will reshape thought and theater and war. History does not end in 1177. It restarts in a different key. When an age dies, it leaves echoes. In hilltop refuges across Greece, we find coarse pottery and hearths built by people who moved upslope to watch the sea. In Cyprus, a boom of ironworking and new rituals, as refugees and locals braid a culture in days when tomorrow is uncertain. In Levantine harbors, the Phoenicians learn to sail farther and sell harder. Their alphabet simplifies writing until a child can learn it and a merchant can afford it. In the highlands, small kingdoms take shape with stories about exodus and covenant and kings who dance and weep and win and fail. What broke at the top? Palaces, diplomatic letters, rerouted at the edges, village shrines, local councils, tech in the hands of more people. Collapse hurt. It also widened who could do what. But you don't feel theory when your city is on fire. Imagine standing on the walls of Ugarit in its last night, watching orange move like an animal down the streets. You smell resin and wet rope and timber and fear. In the palace archives, a scribe keeps writing because that is what he knows how to do. In another room, a woman stuffs a bronze figurine and a handful of cylinder seals into a bag and then leaves it on the floor because something crashes and she runs. Out in the harbor, a captain stares at a shore he has known all his life and counts ships that are not his. If there is a god in that moment, he is busy elsewhere. Across the water at Pylos, A clerk scratches a last order about coast watchers and folds the tablet to dry. You can see the fingerprints in the clay. They look like yours. Outside the walls, a line of women and children move toward the hills, each carrying something they chose in a hurry and will miss forever. A dog follows. Somewhere a priest prays for rain and the wind brings smoke instead. A soldier hefts a bronze sword that will be buried tomorrow in a ditch because he cannot afford for someone else to use it. He will dig with his hands and forget where he dug because forgetting is safer. Egypt, proud and old, carves its victories on temple walls. Enemy ships caught in nets, arrows blackening the air, Pharaoh tall as a god. But behind the stone poems, ration lists grow short, and craftsmen strike and officials write anxious letters about grain. This is the flavor of survival, hollow. The Nile still floods, but the world beyond it has shifted, and every season feels like a gamble. What do we take from 1177 BCE besides good ruins and better stories? A warning and a hope. The warning: the more connected a system is, the more it can share prosperity, and the more it can share failure. When your tin comes from 2 seas away, when your grain depends on strangers, when your armies stand guard over debts instead of borders, the storm is not only outside, it is in the wires. The hope: when big things break, small things survive. People remember how to plant and smelt and sail and sing. New alphabets simplify writing. New gods accept prayers in new languages. New neighbors trade new goods in new ways. We are excellent at beginning again. Close your eyes and listen for the last word the late Bronze Age tried to say. It sounds like a ship's bell far out in a dark bay, a tablet cracking under falling roof beams, a child crying because the grown-ups are carrying too much. It sounds like hoofbeats going the wrong way. Grain rattling in a too-empty jar. Rain finally coming when no one is ready to plant. It sounds like silence where a city used to be, and then another sound, later, miles away. Hammers tapping iron, voices counting in a new tongue, markets forming at crossroads that didn't exist before. Now pan the map forward. The old embers glow where Hittites once counted bread. Assyria sharpens a spear. Phoenician carpenters lay a keel that will cross seas the Bronze Age never dreamed of. A Greek farmer's grandson will one day listen to a poet sing of burnt Troy and homecoming, not knowing his grandfather carried water for watchers of the coast. In the Levant, a scribe adds a line to a story about a people who walked out of a house of bondage. In the hill country, villages stitch together and call themselves kingdoms by the names of their gods. At Carchemish, the last Hittites reinvent themselves as something smaller and harder. On Cyprus, iron glows bright as a new century. The collapse does not end us. It edits us. We live again in a networked age, cargo containers instead of oxide ingots, spreadsheets instead of wax tablets, fiber optic water roads instead of wind. The lesson of 1177 BCE is not that connection kills. It is that redundancy, humility, and local strength are the armor of connection. Diversify your ports. Stock your granaries. Keep your iron skills alive even when bronze is cheaper and shinier. Teach your children 2 alphabets if you can. Respect the weather. Pay attention to the farmers. Listen to the sailors. If a letter comes that says, "The enemy ships are here," do not spend the afternoon polishing your chariot. We end where we began. With a world that thought it had mastered distance and debt and danger, learning that nature, neighbors, and novices with new tools do not keep your calendar. The late Bronze Age collapsed because it was brilliant and brittle at the same time. We do not have to be. If this journey through fire and silence worked on you, if you could taste the smoke at Ugarit, hear the scribes at Pylos, and feel the weight of a sword about to be buried, share this film with a friend who loves history, and subscribe to HistoryMind. We read every comment, we carry the good sentences forward, and we'll meet you again, where another world begins to end, and another ending becomes a beginning.